On the morning of the 14th of September 1936, a group of men walked into the Bank of Spain in Madrid looking to make a withdrawal. But it wasn't just any group of men. This group was composed of paramilitary fighters accompanied by around 50 metallurgists and locksmiths. And it wasn't just any withdrawal they were looking to make. They wanted to withdraw the entire gold reserves of the Bank of Spain. This amounted to 510 tons of gold. That's about $15 billion worth now. But these men weren't thieves. In fact, they had been sent by the Minister of Finance, Juan Negrin, to move the gold out of Madrid and to a safer location. Spain at this time was embroiled in a civil war. On one side of the civil war, the Republicans controlled the gold reserves at the time the war broke out. However, on the other side of the war, the nationalists were quickly making up ground and threatened advancing on Madrid, where the gold was stored. So the gold needed to be moved. Over the course of the next few days, they loaded the gold into wooden boxes, and the boxes into trucks. The trucks drove on to Atocha railway station, where the gold was transferred onto trains headed for the port city of Cartagena. But it's what happened to the gold next that's caused huge controversy. The gold didn't stay in Cartagena for long. Instead, on the night of the 22nd of October, an operation began to load the gold onto 4 Russian vessels. It took 3 nights, working under the cover of darkness, for the loading to be completed. About a week later, the vessels arrived in the USSR at the port of Odessa, where the gold was then unloaded before being moved to its final destination, Moscow. Why was the gold transported to Moscow? And, when it was there, what happened to it? It's this part of the story that remains controversial to this day. First, let's look at the official reason given for the transfer. Finance Minister Negrin and the Prime Minister he served, Largo Caballero, both claimed it was a necessary step for survival when the Republic was faced with no other options. Although the gold was safer in Cartagena in the short term, there was still a possibility the nationalists could raid the port in the future and seize the gold. Ideally then, the gold would be shipped out of the country for safekeeping, but they had very little choice over which country to send it to. This was because of the Non-Intervention Agreement. The Non-Intervention Agreement was signed by 27 countries in September 1936. The agreement stated that all signees would not sell arms to either side of the civil war in Spain to prevent the civil war from growing into an all-out European war. Negrin and Caballero feared that if they sent the gold to be stored outside of Spain, it would be frozen as part of the Non-Intervention Agreement, making it impossible for the Republicans to use the gold to buy arms. To make matters worse, a steady flow of arms and men were arriving on the nationalist side. This is because despite signing the agreement, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy functionally ignored it and sent huge amount of arms and men to support the nationalist side throughout the entirety of the war. This left the Republican side completely isolated, until, that is, the USSR gave them a lifeline. Despite signing the non-intervention agreement as well, the USSR decided that since Germany and Italy were breaking it already, the document was null and void, so they started selling arms to the Republicans. It's in this context that we can start to understand the decision to send the gold to Moscow. It was the only safe place for the gold to be stored. At least, that was Negrin and Caballero's narrative. The other narrative claimed it was a colossal fraud and embezzlement. In the first place, the whole transfer of the gold looked suspicious from the very start. A Russian military historian claims that Stalin only made up his mind to break non-intervention and send arms to the Republicans once the gold transfer was confirmed. In other words, it was a quid pro quo. Give us all your gold, and only then will we help you. There was also immense secrecy that surrounded the decision. Even the President of the Republic, Manuel Athana, didn't know where they would end up. When you combine this mystery and secrecy with the fact that both Negrin and Caballero were socialists who were suspected of being loyal to Moscow, you can see how this narrative of fraud and embezzlement emerged. There is an even bigger question though, which is, what happened to the gold? Reputedly, it was used to pay for arms, and the Republicans did receive arms from the USSR. The Soviet Union provided crucial aircraft to the Republic. Out of all the planes that the Republic imported during the war, 60% came from the Soviet Union. Amongst these were some genuinely great planes, monoplanes that were way in advance of anything any other air force in the world had at that time. They also provided tanks. However, these planes and these tanks didn't come close to meeting the Republican side's needs. Simply not enough of them were provided to be decisive. What the USSR did provide in much larger quantities was rifles. In 1936, the Republicans received just over 58,000 rifles from the Soviets. But these rifles were old, really old. So, was the USSR ripping Spain off? Well, maybe. There is even a claim that upon receiving the gold in Moscow, the Politburo held a banquet to celebrate, and Stalin is quoted as saying, "The Spaniards will never see their gold again, just as they don't see their ears." But there are some more innocent explanations for the lackluster supplies given by the USSR. Firstly, the non-intervention agreement made it extremely difficult to get supplies into Spain from the USSR. Only occasionally did France open its borders to let weapons flow through. Otherwise, the USSR had to transport arms by ships, and they had a genuine lack of these. The USSR also claimed they were giving Spain a discount on the arms they did receive. However, it's on this issue of pricing that it does seem like some genuine fraud went on. Prices charged to Republican Spain often bore no relation to the European prices claimed. Through a system of pricing in rubles, converting to dollars, and then converting to pesetas, the Spanish ended up paying way over the odds, and the USSR made a profit. For every $20 million charged to the Republicans, $6 million of that was an overcharge. So the total overcharge from October 1936 to August 1938 was $51 million. But that $51 million is only a small portion of the $15 billion worth of gold that ended up in Moscow. What happened to the rest of it is still unclear. Nigrin claimed just a year before the war ended that 2/3 of the gold was still available. But the Soviets claimed that by the end of the war, all the gold had been used to pay for arms and operations. So many questions remain about the Moscow gold. If the gold had been used differently, could it have impacted the war? Could the Republicans have won, even? And what really happened to the gold? Was it all used? Or did Stalin pull off the biggest heist of all time? Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscription. It really helps a small channel like mine grow. Thank you.